Let's put aside our feelings for a moment and just talk about facts. Stone cold facts. Trans people are not fueling the epidemic of gun violence in America, despite what conservatives will have you believe. The 7 shootings sensationalized by Fox News, which allegedly involved trans shooters, account for just 0.17% of the 4,147 mass shootings that have occurred between 2018 and 2025. And since trans people make up just 1% of the total U.S. population, this means that they're actually underrepresented in mass shootings, i.e., they're statistically less likely to commit gun violence than their cisgender peers. Conversely, they're actually overrepresented when it comes to victimization, specifically 4 times as likely to be victims of violent crime, including gun violence, of course, according to GLAAD. The only reason why conservative commentators, most of whom are white men, which accounts for 98% of mass shootings, want you to think that trans people are disproportionately responsible for gun violence is because they are cynically trying to exploit people's ignorance about trans people to induce fear and hysteria about them in order to justify a further crackdown on this community. And guess what? The left, broadly speaking, also isn't responsible for the lion's share of political violence in America, even though conservatives desperately want you to think that that's the case following Charlie Kirk's murder. In a 2021 issue of the Journal of Democracy, Rachel Kleinfeld mapped terrorism in the United States between 2000 and 2018 based on ideology. And as you can see, far-right terrorism has been on the rise since 2015, which correlates with Donald Trump's rise, by the way, and far-left terror attacks pale in comparison. We're talking single digits here, but this is only based on one data set. In 2023, the Washington Post published an analysis of ADL data and found that the number of deaths linked to right-wing extremism between 2013 and 2022 far surpassed deaths linked to left-wing and religious extremism. And when you look at individual incidents, the picture is very clear. In 9 out of 10 years that they looked at this data, right-wing extremism caused more deaths than other extremist ideologies. And I get that the ADL no longer has the reputation that it once had, but their results line up with the findings produced by other data sets, such as the Cato Institutes, which concluded that political violence is comparatively rare in the United States altogether. But having said that, of the politically motivated murders that have taken place since 2020, a majority of them, unsurprisingly, came from right-wingers, as you can see. If you go all the way back to 1975, it skews towards religious extremism because of 9/11. But if you exclude 9/11, since that wasn't the result of domestic extremism, you get similar results, with right-wingers far outpacing left-wingers in politically motivated terrorism. And we've only looked at 3 of numerous data sets available that all point to the same conclusion. By and large, right-wingers are responsible for most political violence in the United States. Full stop. Those are the facts. Conservatives are very much aware of these facts, hence why they're trying to suppress data that debunks their narrative about the left being more violent. In fact, as Emmanuel Mayberg of 404 Media reports, the DOJ actually scrubbed their own report about how white supremacist and far-right violence continues to outpace all other types of domestic violent extremism in the United States. They simply don't want you to hear the truth because the facts and statistics available, they conflict with the narrative that they're trying to construct. So if you're a right-winger, I understand why you think that the left is out to get you, because it's what you've been told again and again and again for years by right-wing media outlets and pundits and influencers who profit off of divisive politics. But it's simply not true. They've been lying to you. The left might not respect you or like you, and I'm sure that the feeling is mutual, but they don't want to kill you or harm you. We want to give right-wingers healthcare and education and a habitable planet and clean drinking water for their children and grandchildren. We want to protect you from the harmful policies of politicians that you often vote for, even though you never extend that same empathy towards us or marginalized groups. I don't think that you deserve to lose Medicaid if you voted for Donald Trump, because I genuinely believe that healthcare is a human right. It's non-negotiable. That means it's guaranteed to every single individual, regardless of their ideology or if I think they're a good or bad person. And I feel inclined to really lay this out explicitly, given how the right is now using Charlie Kirk's murder as a justification to suppress the left because of how violent the left apparently is. And this rhetoric is nothing new. Just a couple of months ago, Stephen Miller said this about the Democratic Party. And when he says Democrats, he really is speaking broadly to the left, even though the Democratic Party, objectively speaking, is not left-wing. Nonetheless, here's what he said.
The Democrat Party is an extremist organization, Sean. It's not a political party in any normal sense of the word.
Now, as an actual leftist, you all know I've had my disagreements with the Democratic Party. I've expressed them on this program. But Stephen Miller isn't saying what he's saying to vent. This is an individual in power. He is trying to manufacture consent for an authoritarian crackdown of the opposition. All that they needed was an excuse to crush their opposition in service of protecting Americans from this extremist party. And they got one last week when Charlie Kirk was murdered. And they swiftly announced plans to shut down the left in multiple ways.
But Jesse, you just think about these riots that began in L.A., that they tried to then spread to other cities that Trump is now shutting down. All of them were planned. None of these were organic. And we know because they all followed the same playbook. Same thing on campuses the last 2 years. All these campus so-called demonstrations, it's all astroturf. It's all fake because the Democrat Party today is a theater troupe funded by George Soros. The problem is they're also violent. And that's what we've seen in the last week. Once again, we have got to stop the flow of the money. We've got to prosecute those who engage in violence. And we've got to shut down this attempt to divide the country, which the Democrats have been carrying on for years now.
We're going to remove these leftist liberals on campus who are inciting students. So we're going to hold them accountable. And Laura, I also think that when people do this, their picture ought to be on the internet forever with their name so they never get a job.
We are going to channel all of the anger that we have over the organized campaign that led to this assassination to uproot and dismantle these terrorist networks. So let me explain a little bit what that means. So,
You've got 30 seconds, so be quick, Stephen.
The organized doxing campaigns, the organized riots, the organized street violence, the organized campaigns of dehumanization, vilification, posting people's addresses, combining that with messaging that's designed to trigger and incite violence, and the actual organized cells that carry out and facilitate the violence, it is a vast domestic terror movement. And with God as my witness, we are going to use every resource we have at the Department of Justice, Homeland Security, and throughout this government to identify, disrupt, dismantle, and destroy these networks and make America safe again for the American people. It will happen, and we will do it in Charlie's name.
Now, nobody really knows what that's going to look like in practice. They gave us a couple of examples, but Stephen Miller's rhetoric was fairly vague. But suffice to say, it doesn't bode well for the future. If you use state power to dismantle your opposition, you shut down think tanks and PACs after characterizing them as terror cells and equating them to domestic extremists. That is authoritarianism, right? That is how you turn America permanently into a one-party state. It's what happened in Germany in the aftermath of the Reichstag fire. And that comment and the comments that right-wingers are making have led people to wonder if that's where we're headed, where the Democratic Party is just straight up not legally allowed to exist, which is something that happens in authoritarian regimes when leaders there are trying to consolidate power.
The president's deputy chief of staff came out today and called the Democratic Party an extremist organization after the president said that he was going to take action against extremist organizations. So the question arises in my mind, is the president of the United States going to outlaw the Democratic Party? Is that where we're headed? Is the president of the United States going to unleash the Justice Department on the Democratic Party?
Is that your concern?
It's absolutely a concern. This president has shown that he's willing to use the Department of Justice to go after his political enemies. He said that pretty much openly. And now his deputy chief of staff, who's really the policy director of the White House, is calling the Democratic Party an extremist organization. It raises very real questions about a two-party democratic system in this country.
Now, 5 years ago, I'd say that's bullshit. He sounds like Chicken Little for saying that. But after seeing this administration ignore court orders, deny people habeas corpus and due process, use the military to invade U.S. cities, send immigrants to foreign concentration camps, try to overturn the First and 14th Amendments with executive orders, and also refer to himself as a king and say some people want a dictator, I can't help but think that that right there isn't just possible, but likely. I can't help but think that banning his opposition is what comes next, especially since Donald Trump is currently escalating his threats against the so-called radical left, as HuffPost reports, a call that's been echoed, by the way, by his vice president. And to make matters even worse, right-wing influencers are adding fuel to the fire. Matt Walsh, for example, tweeted, "Radical leftists are the greatest domestic terror threat we face. They killed Charlie. One person killed Charlie, not, quote, the left. They will kill many more if they can. They want us dead, and they're very clear about it. The media is trying to run cover for them and let them off the hook. The right must not help them in that effort. That would be a huge mistake, one of the worst mistakes I've ever seen conservatives make. And with regard to Kirk's murder, he said, this was left-wing LGBT terrorism. There was never much doubt. Now, there is none at all. All left-wing terror networks must be crushed. All of the terrorists and their helpers and funders must be arrested, prosecuted, and put to death. But what constitutes a terrorist helper? Someone who advocates for LGBT rights? He said that all of the left is responsible for killing Charlie Kirk and seemingly all LGBTQ plus people. So is it just anybody who advocates for left-wing values or LGBTQ plus rights, or do they actually have to be a literal accessory to murder to qualify? Like, I'm just trying to figure out the parameters to determine who should or shouldn't be murdered based on Matt Walsh's arbitrary criteria. He's not the only one, though, who's calling for a crackdown on the left. Others, like Laura Loomer, are demanding Trump do the same thing that they say you should never, ever do, which is political violence against your political opponents. She tweeted, I have to say, I do want President Trump to be the dictator the left thinks he is, and I want the right to be as devoted to locking up and silencing our violent political enemies as they pretend we are. I've had enough of the left only thinking we will defund them, prosecute them, lock them up, and dismantle their power for generations to come. It just needs to happen. And far-right influencer Ali Alexander took it even further, and I'm just going to let him speak for himself.
My attention is going to be on trying to get Kash Patel fired, trying to get Donald Trump off his fat ass to avenge his friend, trying to use state power to tell civil libertarians to shut up while we excise all of Antifa from our country. I think 500,000 people need to be arrested, tried, and possibly killed if they're convicted for treason or something like that. I think America needs a penal colony. I do not want to coexist with these people.
So the rhetoric just keeps escalating and escalating. And, 10 years ago, they wanted you to believe that the left was a threat because they wanted to take away your rights, your guns and whatnot. Now they're telling you, actually, the left wants you dead. The evidence being jokes about Charlie Kirk, I guess. I mean, mere coexistence with the left is something that they are increasingly unable to tolerate, and this administration seemingly feels the same way as these right-wing influencers. So the question is, what happens now? How do we move forward as a country when one side of the political aisle is going full authoritarian? They have power right now, mind you, so they're not just talking shit. They're actualizing their authoritarian goals. How do we exist in a climate where shit like this is celebrated on the right? Songs are created to incite violence against their political opponents.
We need a big tall tree and a short piece of rope. Hang them up high at sundown. Leave them swinging so the folks all know you don't mess around in our town.
Now, that is the latest song from MAGA rapper Forgiato Blow, who's not insignificant. He's made songs with elected Republicans. For example, Marjorie Taylor Greene. They played his music at the Republican National Convention. For all intents and purposes, this is a very successful MAGA influencer, and he didn't even have the decency to take down that hate anthem about lynching, even though days after he released it, the body of a black student named Trey Reed was found hanging from a tree at Delta State University in Mississippi. But the right never glorifies violence, according to them. It's only the left, because students on college campuses were joking about Charlie Kirk's death. I mean, you can find an example for somebody joking about anything, but that doesn't mean that you can extrapolate based on that example and generalize about an entire group of people. But if you joke about death, then that means the entire left is out to get you. You want to know who else makes jokes about death, by the way? Our vice president.
And I was talking to Secretary Hegseth, and you know what he said? He said, you know what, Mr. Vice President? We don't see any of these drug boats coming into our country. They've completely stopped. And I said, I know why. I would stop too. Hell, I wouldn't go fishing right now in that area of the world.
Nothing to see here, folks. Just the vice president of the United States joking about Venezuelans that his administration extrajudicially murdered because they alleged without evidence that they were trying to smuggle drugs into the United States. I mean, even if that were true, would that really justify the death penalty and lack of due process? I think not, if you want to be considered a civilized society. But it's only the left who jokes about death and glorifies death. On another note, you want to know who else jokes about deaths and glorifies violence? Take a guess.
So, it's funny. I used to say that, hey, if you as a gay person would go to Gaza, they'd throw you off of tall buildings, right? Now they don't have any tall buildings left, so I don't...
When you mess with the bull, you get the horns.
Is that too soon? I'm sorry. Maybe you shouldn't kill Jews, stupid Muslims.
So funny. We've got to suppress the left in that man's name because you can never glorify violence. Now, according to Israel's own intelligence, 83% of Palestinians who are being murdered in Gaza are civilians who are not responsible for what Hamas does, by the way. But it's funny to joke about their destruction, apparently, because I guess that guy's a left-winger, Charlie Kirk, left-winger, because it's only leftists who joke about violence. And by the way, that line about how Palestinians would throw gays off of buildings is used to justify their killings. But even if that were true, the sentence for homophobia shouldn't be a death sentence. Otherwise, you could use that same logic to rationalize bombings of people in the South. Charlie Kirk himself called stoning gay people God's perfect law. But I mean, it's only the left who glorifies violence, according to right-wing media. I'm so fucking sick of it, on a serious note. I am so tired of it. I'm sick of right-wingers' selective outrage about political violence. I'm sick of them lying about trans terrorism, which is a despicable term because terrorism is committed against them more often than not. I'm so sick of them pretending like they themselves don't make fun of people's deaths. I mean, Steven Crowder did an entire fucking live stream reenacting George Floyd's death to, I guess, prove that he couldn't possibly have died from a knee on his neck. And as disgusting as that is, it's somehow less perverse than the reaction to right-wingers to Trayvon Martin's murder. He's a child, and this TikToker is going to refresh our memory about the way that they responded to his death.
I'm going to lose my mind if conservatives keep pretending like mocking Charlie Kirk's death makes you some disgusting, horrible human being, especially when they reacted to the death of nearly every black person in the last 15 years like this. Like, when Trayvon Martin died, they held meet and greets with George Zimmerman and asked him to sign bags of Skittles and cans of iced tea, and the gun that he used to kill Trayvon Martin was auctioned off for like $250,000. Like, the hypocrisy is insane. Every single time a black person has been the victim of police brutality, you guys have dug up their entire history to try to prove that they somehow deserved it, but when we use Charlie Kirk's own words, you say that we're heartless and disgusting people for it. And even though I know that the entire conservative platform is just built on hypocrisy, the amount of gaslighting that I'm seeing is actually crazy. Like people saying, well, we never celebrated anyone's death. We never mocked anyone's death. We felt bad that those things happened. Like, we saw your reaction in real time. Your digital footprint is out there. Like, the same people who were just mocking Alligator Alcatraz, saying that immigrants were going to be the perfect meal and taking their families there for photo shoots, are trying to claim they have a moral high ground because we won't mourn the person who enabled that culture in the first place. You guys are delusional. You've genuinely lost it.
He couldn't be more right. So I don't know what comes next, but regardless of how oppressive this administration becomes, at least spare us the fucking bullshit. Justifying political oppression by pretending like a particular group poses some sort of societal threat has become all too common in this country, and it's been used throughout the history in numerous countries to consolidate power and crush dissent. But, I mean, this really isn't new for conservatives, so we shouldn't be surprised. They exploited Laken Riley's murder to pretend as if all immigrants are a threat, even though statistically they're less likely to commit crimes than American citizens. They pretend as if trans people are uniquely likely to commit gun violence, therefore stripping them and only them of their Second Amendment rights is actually warranted, even though they are statistically less likely to commit gun violence. And now, because the individual who murdered Charlie Kirk might be a left-winger, they're using that one example as a justification to crack down on the entire left, because we're all responsible for what that one person did to Charlie Kirk. But that's all it takes, I guess. Right? That's all it takes. They've created this environment where whenever there's a tragedy, we all have to be on pins and needles, hoping and crossing our fingers that the perpetrator of whatever violence we're seeing isn't gay or trans or black or a Muslim, because we all know that that one incident is going to be used as a pretense for a crackdown on the entire fucking community, because that's apparently how it works now. If a gay person does something bad, that reflects poorly on all gay people. If a black person does something bad, it says something about all black people. If a white person does something bad, however, well, it's probably just because, he was radicalized by the woke gays or blacks. This is their logic, and it is literally Nazi logic. This is what Hitler and the Nazi Party did to demonize Jewish people. They characterized them as this threat, not just a violent threat, but a cultural threat, a societal threat. And you can't have a functioning democracy when this is what one of two political parties is doing. But they're not going to stop doing this. It never ends, and I'm so tired of it. Right-wingers seem to be looking for any excuse to just not have to share a country with the rest of us. And if things keep heading down this path, if we continue on this current trajectory, I genuinely don't know what that means for America. If right-wingers want Christian supremacy and white supremacy, what does that mean for the rest of us?
Do yourself a favor and click the join button on YouTube to become a member. Because Mike's doing a great job. Getting to watch his videos before everyone else is tremendous. Many people are saying this. Join today, folks. You won't regret it.